Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is MadLetter and today I want to show you some more, artistic stuff. We're on the creative side again today. So I want to do a follow-up to yesterday. Yesterday I showed you guys how to create a space map for a greater region of space. Today I want to show you how to make something like this. This here, all big and fairly empty, is a system map with orbits for the various planets and descriptors, and yeah, that's just more or less what I'm going to show you how to generally approach today. So if I actually go into the details here, you can see there's a whole lot of empty space. There's the orbits, all the planets described with their own little bit of info blurb, and yeah, that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. So let's go ahead and get to it. We start again with a square-sized empty black layer here in Photoshop. And like before, I'm just going to go ahead and take the star background I have. As I mentioned in the other video, you can find plenty of those online. You can make them yourself. There's a lot of good tutorials. I found one I use for private use and to show this off right now. So yeah, don't hesitate, just look around. You will most likely find something that fits what you're going for. Like before as well, make sure to reduce the opacity a bit, something that works for you. I'm going here with, say, 75-ish%. Create a new layer on top. We're gonna take the scatter brush I had before to showcase again. I use the white color. If I have this at 100% opacity, I click and drag. I get kind of like a scatter brush thing going on here. I can layer those on top of one another fairly easily to create nebula-like structures and other effects. It's really, really handy. You can look up how to create these scatter brushes as well, and if you want, just leave a comment. I can give you access to my brush if you need it. So we're gonna go back to black color, and then like in the other one, we just have, say, 50-ish% opacity and just, you know, paint over some of the areas a little bit, make sure there's a bit more variety. Couple spaces where there's nearly no stars at all, like up here. And that will, if we deactivate and reactivate, make a fair bit of a difference already. Same like before, we're gonna add some blue tones here and there. Just spread them around a little bit. And then look at the layer blend modes. Like the other video, I say it once again, layer blend modes are your friend. Make sure you look through them, use them, they do good things for you. Most of it, honestly, is just experimentation. Even I just don't know by hand, by rote, which does which kind of color blending exactly. Okay, so we now have our star layers set up. We're gonna pack them all into a folder group. You can do that by selecting all of them and pressing Ctrl G. We're gonna call this our background. So let's blend it out. We're gonna create a new layer. Go ahead and select the Elliptical Marquee tool. We start near the top left, click and drag, and now hold Shift. Shift enforces a 1-to-1 ratio. You can see I cannot make this an actual oval. It will always be a circle. Make it just about as big as makes sense, a little bit of space all around. That is fine. Fill it with any color. I just take white. And then right click and convert to Smart Object. Like before, once again, I'll just quickly explain it. The Smart Object essentially means it's now a Photoshop file in a Photoshop file. That means if I actually go ahead and reduce it to small size, accept it and make it big again, I won't lose fidelity. The circle itself is still in the maximum size it was created, saved inside the file. You can always just double click inside and change things in here if you want to. Right now, we don't need to. So close again. We're gonna go ahead, reduce the fill to 0%. Reducing fill as different to opacity means that essentially we are disabling the pixel layer, but any kind of effects we have will remain active. So we're gonna go ahead, add a stroke, 1 on the outside, blend mode normal, opacity 30%. That's what we had yesterday for the other video, where I showed you how to do kind of like distance markers from a certain point. This is no different. This is our orbits. They are in essence, if you remember, distance markers. So go ahead and OK that one. If we go to 100% zoom, yeah, that should do nicely for orbits. Should be plenty visible. Let's make the check. Yeah, even on the star map, it's still fairly visible. That's kind of what we want. So, disable that one again. Disable the background again, so we can work on a pure black field. And now we're going to repeat the process we had in the other video once more. We're going to create ourselves a star. Drag a straight line. To keep a straight line, you can see it's currently crooked. Press Shift, and it'll align to essentially the 45-degree angles. Okay, we create a new layer, select both, Control E to render down to a single one. That's kind of a quick way to render down to a single pixel layer without much hubbub. That's kind of how I learned it. That's probably an easier way nowadays, but you know, you stick by what you learn a lot. We're gonna go with motion blur. We're gonna make it so that the inside is thick and it tapers away to nothing at the outside. Then we just copy the layer, turn it by 90 degrees, take both of those layers, copy them, and turn them by 45. There we go. Now the ones we just copied, we make them a bit smaller. Okay, so now a new layer again. We pick a soft round brush, hardness 0, size, whatever fits. I'm currently going with a 150. That is depending on how big you actually made the beams. And then just click a bit in the middle, make it larger. I'll actually move it the center point a bit to the lower left. Looks like it's streaming up, but this time around, I'm gonna create that far out glow on a different layer, which means I can reduce it easier. There we go. That should probably look fairly good. Yeah. Okay. New layer again, and then we're just gonna essentially pump up the core. It'll make it really bright. And then opacity way low. This is something I didn't do yesterday. And if we click a little bit, you can see how the outer shine just becomes like very discrete steps here. That can be a nice effect if you want it. It's not necessary, obviously. We're going to use it for today. And then one last thing where I just get a whole bit more strength in the center point. And one little bit down here. And an even smaller one up here for a bit of a slight lens flare effect. Then we take all of these, we right click and convert to Smart Object once again. That again means we still have the original 1-to-1 fidelity, but we can now go ahead and reduce it in size. We don't want our star to be, you know, super overpowering. Next, we're going to create these help lines so we know exactly where the middle is. And then we place the star straight in the middle. Down a little bit, and there we go. So, if these lines ever annoy you, can just hover over them and drag them away. If you can't, look under View. Lock guides might be active. You need to unlock them potentially. You can always just also under Show activate and deactivate the guides with Control comma essentially. Yeah, okay. My keyboard doesn't want to at the moment. Fine. I'll do it manually. Okay, so now we need our orbit layer thingy. We're gonna go into Control T transformation mode. We're gonna make sure it's actually over the middle, like this. And then you just go ahead and drag it however big you want it. If you need to know how to essentially click and drag so it snaps to middle point, I probably didn't explain that yesterday either, because it's something I do subconsciously already. Like if you normally just try to transform, you get elliptical shapes. once again, press Shift to force it onto a 1:1 ratio. Well, not necessarily 1:1, but original aspect ratio. And if you also press Alt, it will work out from the center point, which is exactly what we need here. So let's put down a far inner orbit here. Looks good. So now we're gonna just go ahead. All right, we need to name this star and put it not in the background. Come on, between the two layers. Give it its own folder just to be safe and call it star. Okay, so now we have the first kind of orbital layer here, and we just go ahead and essentially plan out how do we want things. I want, in this case, a inner planet that's fairly close, a second one that's fairly close. Also, a quick tip, if you have something selected you just want to copy, just hold Alt, tip to the left, tip to the right, so it's again in the same space, and you have copied the layer. Essentially, whenever you press Alt and move things, you copy them. So now we have 3 of these orbital layers. We're going to go ahead and drag another one out, a bit farther this time. And then a really far out one, and that's actually going to be it for the system. I'm going to do a fairly small one. I am actually doing one for my own campaign map here. So this is the one I showed you in the other video, the one where I showed you how to make something like this. And I have the Shasta Blink Gate already created. This is the map you've seen before, this one. And now I want to do another one for the system nearby, Fanduel. So that is what we're going to do. Okay, so now we have all of these orbits set up how we want them to be. I'm gonna go ahead and give each one its own folder. So I'm gonna call this Fanduel 1. Always make sure by deactivating and activating that I'm at the proper one, the second one. Fanduel 2. This is gonna be Fanduel 3. Yep. And this is Fanduel 4. Okay. Now we get to the fun part, actually creating the planets and stuff. Already, by the way, if we just activate the background, it should already look pretty nice. And it does. Okay, so we go zoom in, we just select any one point where we want to have the planet be at the moment on the image. Let's say you want to have it down here somewhere. So I'm gonna go ahead, essentially put the mouse pointer over the point where I want the planet to be. Click and drag, and like before, if we press Alt, it emanates from that central point, and if I press Shift, it'll go to a 1:1 aspect ratio. So this is going to be a fairly small planet. Put it like this. We zoom out again, yeah, that's already fairly sizable on the galactic scale, but these maps are never representative on proper scale anyways. So, create a new layer in the Fanduel folder structure, the Fanduel 1 where we are, and then just fill it with any color. There we go. We have our first planet location. Now, with a map of this size, even if you make it a fair bit larger still, you do not really need to create any coherent, proper map. You can just work with colors and very simple patterns. So we're gonna go ahead and do a fairly simple thing that many people just don't know about. We're gonna link layers. I'm gonna make a new project here just to show you real quick how it works. So I have a shape, any shape, whatever. And I now wanna color something or put anything on top of that shape, but only that shape. What I can obviously do is essentially select the outline, you know, and then just create a new layer, create a layer mask, and then just paint in there. So if I paint red right now, you can see it only affects the orb. There's an easier way to do that, in my opinion. Namely, if we have a layer on top of that, we can just click and hold Alt, and you can see the mouse pointer changes already. And if you click on that, you can see the downward facing arrow here, which means this layer is now locked. It does essentially the same thing. So if I paint here, once again, I only affect the orb. You can stack these multiple times over. You can do the same with the, what are they called again? Adjustment layers. There we go. And yeah, you can just do that with that stuff. So if you take a look, let's just take a brownish color real quick. If I were to unlock all those layers, I do that by unlocking the lowermost, you know, all that would affect the background. And the more I lock to that, the less the background is affected and the more it works. That's what we're going to do now with those planets. So we're going to create a new layer. First of all, though, we're going to call this planet mockup, create a new layer, and link it. And this is an inner planet, so what kind of color scheme do we want to go with here? Let's make it a kind of weird toxic world that has some fairly hardcore colorations. For this purpose, there's a whole lot of artistic brushes that Photoshop comes delivered with. They are fairly great for exactly what we're doing here. So we're just gonna paint over that. Yeah, there's a bit of color coming in. A lot of the patterns during this stage will not be very visible, just be aware of that. Let's take a bit of a different one, the Rumbled Medium. Give it a darker touch. Yeah, that already looks a little bit better. Let's see if we can get some yellow tones in slightly. You can always go ahead and just add another layer on top. And like before, just, for example, try how does making it purple and use the various layers work. This, for example, looks really nice. Looks like a very small, toxic kind of Venus-style planet. This one's also pretty weird. As I've mentioned so often already, these blend layers just give you so much interesting control. And this is more or less exactly what I was going for. That looks pretty nice. Very good. Also, I think we've accidentally created an kind of line effect exactly where the orbit is. Just make sure, yeah, it's in the image itself. I thought for a moment it wasn't fully 100% opacity there. So let's make sure you don't mistake that. And a little bit more detail like that. Just a little bit of purple. Okay, so now we've got that done. The planet looks okay from a distance. I mean, again, it's very small, it's intended to be. You can make these a lot bigger, but just keep in mind I'm already working on a 2000 by 2000, I think. Yeah, 2000 by 2000 pixels. So yeah, just, you know, these are artistic maps. They are not intended for 100% authenticity, because if they would be, that planet would literally be 1 pixel or something. Okay, so now we have that anyways. These are our 3 coloration layers. And the last one we add is always the same, namely the shadow. To make the planet appear actual 3-dimensional, you can do a variety of things. You can, for example, go ahead and have a bevel effect. Let me see if I can show it a little bit. If I give the base layer a bevel effect and add the size, you can see it does something. And we want a smooth, fairly deep bevel here that is softened. So if I deactivate it, you can see there's a bit of an already roundish look that comes from the bevel effect. And lastly, to make it appear proper, new layer on top. And we take standard lag, say 30-ish opacity, and about a little bit bigger or smaller than the planet itself, and then just add a dark sickle, kind of like that. There. And then we can just retroactively, for example, take down the opacity a little bit, or like before, try to see what works on the layer blending. Typically with dark side, I'd stick to normal and just reduce opacity to maybe 95, so you can at least very slightly see the back half of the planet. So, say we want a actual moon out here. We can go ahead, take the orbital layer. Let's actually name this orbital layer 1. We can just copy that on top of the stack. And then we just make it smaller, put it center over the planet. Yeah, that should roughly fit. And then just slim it down. The moon layers I would make a lot less visible because, you know, we won't want to clash it with the main things, the main orbital pathways. And on this size, best you can do actually is just a very slight tip of color. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and pick one of the gray-blue colors here, go to a small pixel radius, full opacity, and then just there. Moon is there. And now if we activate the background, you can barely see the moon. That's kind of a thing that's happening at this size. The bigger ones won't be, won't be that much of a problem. So, deactivate the background again. We go to the next one. Say the next one is nearly straight top. And now we are just essentially going to keep doing the same thing over and over. We take a slightly bigger planet this time. This is a fairly close to the inner rim, not quite gas giant, but a barren world with a very tight cloud cover of sorts. That's what I'm going for now. This is Orbital 2. And just like before, we just gonna tricks around, see what works. Let's take the round fan stiff thin brush. Those things are always fun. And actually, yeah, let's go with a bit of red to start with. Turn down the opacity and then just take a smaller version of that brush. Paint in different colorations. And like before, just see where it takes you. Be creative, see what drops out of the hat. As mentioned though, at this size you can largely do with just various color patterns and stuff like that. You could also go ahead and be a bit more specific, say add a second layer, and then just actually paint in strong lines across the planet. There we go. And then once again, let's see what shakes out if we just put them through various blending modes. Not too pretty this time around, honestly. That has a bit of a weird look. Let's... oh yeah. Oh yeah, that looks very Jovian. Yeah, it's got a bit of a reminiscence there. Okay, so on this one we're actually already done. We go ahead and once again paint in the shadows. A bit much this time. Let's go to 90%. Yeah, okay, I redo that shadow. That one didn't look very well. Yeah, that starts looking better. There we go. And now just take the eraser, low opacity, and free the core of the planet a little bit more. That part would be still a lot better visible. There, give it 97% so we can vaguely see the back end. And there we go. That looks already pretty decent again. We're gonna go ahead, take the orbit again. We're gonna give this one a couple moons. We'll make sure it's pretty much centered. There we go. And down we go. Slim it down all the way. And let's say this one has 2 sizable moons. So this one a bit bigger. Make sure they're at low percentages compared to the other one. Yeah, just about the same. And here we actually go ahead and paint in one of the moons, a smaller one. For that, we're actually going to take a fairly strong white this time around. And I do have an Asteroid Brush that might be suitable for that. Let's see what happens if I just click once. Yeah, that works. A bit of an irregular lump. Kind of what we want. And the inner one, we're actually gonna give a small, very small planet vibe. And if we wanna paint the moon in a kind of specific way, we do it just like it were a planet, essentially. We take the respective colors we want, paint it in. Yeah, it's getting there. A bit more red this time. Give me a bit more red. Yeah, that works. And like with the parent here, since we actually have a bit of a rounded one, go ahead, make sure paint in a shadow, because right now it still looks fairly flat. And if we not add red, that wasn't what I wanted. Delete that. Color to black. Yep. There we go. There we go. Looks a lot better already. We can do the same if we want for the other small minor moon, but it will barely register really. There we go. Remember, if we want, we can just once again take the bevel effect. You can always go ahead, right click and copy layer style, and then apply it to the other ones. So if we paste it in, yeah, it already looks a fair bit more dynamic now. Though the shadow has jumped around a fair bit. It looked better without, honestly. That's also something you just need to test out for yourself, see where it goes. And now we come to Fundo 3, Orbit. Come on, Orbital 3. We add another planet mockup. And this time, yeah, let's put him to the right, slightly down. This is going to be a fairly big sized planet to show you how to do that as well. Okay, so what do we then do with that one? We can actually do some stuff here. Let me, on my second monitor, look for something real quick. So, if you have maps you like that have a bit of a satellite imagery style, you could go ahead and paste that in, small it down all the way, shrink it down, make it fit. And the squished together look maybe weird at first, but it's kind of it's working out better than you might expect at first. So I have a very, very large map available here, as we can see, size-wise. So just to show you, that's one of the fantasy maps I made. I'm gonna go ahead, apply that to the planet, slim it down all the way, something like that. And right now it still obviously looks weird. That's kind of given at the moment. To change that, we're going to go ahead and give this another bevel boss effect. It already looks a bit better. Got a bit of natural shadow and a bit of natural highlight here. You can always take the shading and use this as your planet representation. Make sure you use global light as ticked off, and just make sure the light is coming the right way. Kind of like this. A bit. Yeah, that works for us. So that's something you can do. And now it already looks a little bit better. This is a fairly ginormous mega Earth at the moment. You can do this with all the planets as well to give it a bit more of a background texture. You can just also use normal textures and work on them with colors. Right here I want to try and give it a bit more of a blue hue. So paint over a little bit of the blue. Yeah, that kind of looks a bit frosty now. It's supposed to not be, in this case, the biggest of suns around. So yeah, that works for what I want right now. So now we go ahead and add in additional shadows. There we go. And now, very, very important, we have a planet with atmosphere. Any planet with atmosphere obviously needs to show an atmosphere. So what you're going to do is take the planet mockup itself and give it an outer glow. Let me first zoom in a bit more though. Okay, outer glow. So choose a color that works. In this case, very light blues tend to work fairly well, as do white tones. We're going to take a fairly baby blue here and set the size fairly small. The spread, see what works. Generally, you want a very low spread, couple percentage points maybe. Look at the quality, see what works for you. You typically want it to be somewhere in the middle, maybe towards 60%. Jitter you don't want active. And then maybe a little bit of noise, but only very, very small numbers. Typically, I go without. Okay, there we go. We need more shadows though, so... because now the atmosphere actually comes out really nice. Once again, we're gonna clear some from the middle here. And that looks wonderful. Like before, we're gonna add in some more orbit lines. In this case, let's add one moon. We could, though, actually do something more fun right now. Put down the size a lot. And now, let's see if I can find it. I have something in mind I would like to show you. Essentially, let's use the Asteroid Brush I used to make the other moon. We're gonna take a white color, make it a little bit grayish. Make sure the size is fairly far down. And opacity 100% for now, and then just... it works somewhat. Nah, not really, not really. Okay, so let's do this another way. We're gonna take the elliptical Marquee tool, and we're gonna drag out a bit of an oval around the planet, kind of like this. Move it the way we want to. And then let's go ahead and fill it with color on a new layer. There we go. I'm trying something. This is improvisation, deviating from the script here fairly hard, but hey. Where's the sign like that? Fill down to 0. Then we're gonna go ahead and give it, say, an outer glow. Let's make it snazzy. And then we give it an inner glow. Small one again. And pick a right proper color here. You know what, let's make it size 4. We add in a stroke in between the two on the center line here. Maximum opacity. And let's give it a bit of a dark blue color. Something like this. Okay, now we just need to hide the top of it. There's a couple of ways to do this. The more or less easiest way that comes to my mind, but then again I'm doing weird things, is essentially take all of the planet we have made, convert it to a smart object, and copy it on top of the rings. And then just essentially add a mask. Take a normal brush and just paint away the underside. So essentially right now, if we delete the one below, that's what we have on top, just to overlay it. That's what we have on the bottom. It's a bit large, so let's go ahead and reduce it in size. Something like that. Yeah. And now let's actually go ahead and increase the outer glow here a little bit. Or remove. Bit of a matter of taste, honestly. I could spend days doing that. That's kind of like a quick way to do that. I might just look into how to make this a bit better looking and do another tutorial, but I'm gonna have to see about that. So right now we have 3 of our planets. For now, let's actually leave this with just the ring and without a moon. So let's go ahead and deal with the last one over here. Say over here. We create a new layer. You should know the trick by now. We create the mock planet. And then we just layer stuff on top. In this case, I'd like to go for a gray, blue, brown kind of vibe with this planet. Let's give it a red-brown base coloration. And we're gonna take the watercolor builder. Let's try that one. Yeah, handles a bit weird. Okay. Let's see where that takes us if I just... Oh yeah, that's got some interesting potential here. If I just do it like that, it actually looks fairly wild in its own way. Let's add another layer, see where it goes from there. A bit of a brighter blue. And then a fairly dark blue in small rings like that. Yeah, that looks pretty much like what I had in mind. Bit of gray, a bit of blue, there's light purples in there, and a bit of yellowish, actually fairly bright. Okay, so let's go ahead, add in the actual shadow. Remember to reduce the opacity for that one. And reduce it out a bit in the middle. And in this case, we actually want another orbital layer. We want to give this one a moon. By the way, I'm not sure I explained the reasoning in the beginning. One moment. The reasoning, we start with a circle as big as we more or less can make it in this layer. Simply, if we do a small circle and enlarge that one, the effects surrounding it will not be as smooth. Right now they all look the same, you know, but if you take a small circle, let's actually show it real quick. Right, and there we go, fill down and give it where do you have it? There, let's just copy the layer style over. Paste the layer style. So right now this looks as the others do, but if I go ahead and make this larger, you can see how it begins yeah, getting a real ugly look. Doesn't look good at all. So yeah, let's not do that. Start with a big circle, that way you have high fidelity all around. Okay, so here we want another fairly small moon. So just take white coloration, something like that, and then add the... Oh right, I'm on the... I was on the eraser here. Okay, so add a bit of the darkness on top. There we go. And now we have the main system setup complete. So let's go ahead, scroll all the way down. We've got a whole bunch of stuff by now, and activate the background. And voila, you have something that already looks pretty decent. Now is the point when you probably want to go ahead and tweak your looks a bit more of the background, you know, make it a bit less visible, for example, kind of like this, so you have a bit more actual, visibility on your planets. What you can also do actually is go ahead, take another basic round soft brush, make it fairly large, low opacity, say 10 to 15% in black, and then just click a couple times. Use it and do the same, you know, a couple circles. Because the idea being here, the star will likely outshine more or less the galactic background in a picture like that. So we're essentially mimicking that. We can do the same around the planets a little bit. You can even go ahead and increase the opacity for that. It will help you keep the planets visible without it looking like, you know, you painted away all the stars. Just be careful that you don't overdo it, because if you don't see the stars like in areas around here and here, you know, it looks fake very quickly. So that's that. The next thing you could do, should do, would want to do is just label things. And I don't think I need to tell you how to do that. In my case, I'm just gonna quickly go through essentially the most important stuff, just to have it done once. So we click in, we take a font we want. In this case, I have the Doses font in mind, light cut, and then obviously we want white, since that's fairly easy to read. And this one was the FanDuel system. So let's go ahead and reduce the size a little bit, not quite that much. That should work. Let's make it justified to the left. And there, that would be FanDuel 3. We give it a name. Let's give it the name Calder. Or actually, since it's the actual inhabited planet of the system, it is just FanDuel. Next, we give it a classification. That's what I do, at least. This one is a mega Earth. No moons. Planetary ring. And then who does it belong to? It belongs to Union. Actually, no, it doesn't. Let me pull up my actual map. If you don't know about Union and stuff like that, it's essentially, I'm making this map for the Lancer RPG, for a region I have created. This is the Tsunamati administration. Okay, we can actually go ahead and reduce the size of these entries here a bit. And now if you go to 100% zoom, it's easily readable still. Actually a bit too large for my taste still. Go down to 18 here. And see how does 14 work. It's still readable. Okay. And that you just copy over to all the planets, fill it with the respective details. You may want to change the justification sometimes if it fits. So I do it here so it doesn't get in the way of the Mega Earth we created here. And then, essentially, yeah, you are done. You have a system map. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if you did. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments. Look up on my channel, there's a whole bunch more tutorials and videos kind of like this. Most of them so far deal with more fantasy or planetary maps themselves. This here is more or less my first foray into telling you guys how to do science fiction maps. So yeah, once again, that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. And as a last reminder, I'm gonna post a link to my cartography Discord in the comment section. Look it up, feel free to join. I'm hanging out there all the time. I'm more than willing to essentially take a look at what you do, tell you what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, give constructive criticisms if I can. So yeah, feel free to drop by. It's a small, cozy community. And yeah, that's it. Have a nice day.